Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
And I'm Krista.
And we are missing Kayla. She is finishing up a couple weeks of self-defense classes. And hopefully this is the last one that we don't have her with us.
Yes.
Yep.
We miss her.
We do. We like her comments and everything she brings to the table. So we are missing her, but hopefully she's back for our next case.
Yes.
We have a interesting case from Vermont from 2004 today.
Okay.
So I want to take you back to a cold night in rural Vermont in 2004. Imagine this. A car is found abandoned, backed into the side of an old farmhouse on a desolate road. The rear end of the car has literally smashed into the back wall of the house, and a piece of plywood from a window is lying on the trunk. This scene looks almost staged, like something out of a horror movie. A car half swallowed by a vacant, weather-beaten building in the middle of nowhere. And the driver? Gone. This isn't the start of a ghost story, though. It's the real-life mystery of 17-year-old Brianna Maitland, who vanished on March 19th, 2004, leaving behind so many unanswered questions.
That's so young.
It's so young. And I was like doing this. I'm like, oh, she's like my age. Like, that's awful to think about at that time in your life, you know?
And I was thinking, oh, this was not too long ago, but it's still over 20 years ago.
21 years now, yeah.
Yeah. For over 20 years. Her family, friends, and an entire community have been desperate to find out what happened. It's a case that haunted Vermont for decades. Unfortunately, remains unsolved to this day.
Oh, you got my hopes up. You said it haunted them for decades. I was hoping you were going to say that they finally solved it.
I wish, but there are new developments. So if you have heard this story before, but it isn't recent, we've got some updates for you. So before we dive into the events of that fateful night, it's important to know who Brianna was. She wasn't just a name in a headline. She was a real person. She had talents, dreams for her future, and people who loved her. Brianna Alexandra Maitland was born on October 8th, 1986, and grew up on her parents' farm in rural East Franklin, Vermont, which isn't far from the Canadian border. She had an older brother and came from a close-knit family. By all accounts, her childhood was normal and happy. Brianna was trained in jiu-jitsu from a young age. Yes, you heard that right. This petite Vermont teenager could throw down some martial arts moves. It was a passion she and her family shared, and it made her strong and confident. Her friends would later say Brianna was tough, but also incredibly kind and caring. Brianna was the kind of friend you wanted in your corner. One friend, Katie, recalls her first day at a new school, feeling alone, not knowing anyone. She remembers Brianna immediately welcomed her. "You can sit with me," Brianna had said with a smile, eagerly patting the seat next to her. Katie remembered how Brianna's simple act of kindness made her feel at ease in a scary new situation. Brianna did that. She had a way of making people comfortable. She was that friend who'd invite you in, make you laugh, especially when you needed it. Those who knew her often describe her as free-spirited, independent, and full of life. By the time she was 17, Brianna was itching for more independence. On her 17th birthday in October 2003, she made a big decision. She wanted to move out of her parents' home. Now, this wasn't due to some huge fight or family issue. Her mother, Kelly, later said that there were no serious stresses at home. Bri just craved freedom and wanted to live closer to friends in a nearby town. I guess that's relatable for a lot of teenagers, right?
Is that possible as a 17-year-old? I guess it would be.
Yeah, I mean, they let her. But it wasn't very stable. She didn't get a place of her own. She went from kind of friend to friend.
Okay.
Brianna's parents, Bruce and Kelly, were apprehensive but ultimately supportive of Brianna's need for independence. So Brianna moved about 15 miles away to live with friends, and she transferred to a new high school. However, like I said, living on various friends' couches and trying to be in that unstable situation while finishing high school proved challenging. This took a toll on her schooling, and by February 2004, she dropped out of high school. But here's the thing, Brianna was ambitious and determined. She wasn't giving up on her education. She enrolled in a GED program to earn her high school equivalency diploma. At the same time, she worked 2 jobs to support herself. So imagine that at 17, juggling GED classes with double employment. One job was as a dishwasher at a restaurant called the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery, Vermont, and the other was at a diner in St. Albans. It's clear Brianna was hardworking and trying to build a life on her own terms. Friends say Brianna was fun-loving too. She drove an old pale green 1985 Oldsmobile sedan, a big boxy boat of a car that she was oddly proud of. They'd pile in and cruise around listening to music. One of her friends fondly remembered those rides with Brianna behind the wheel, radio blaring, as some of the best times they had together. You can absolutely picture it. Windows down, teenagers feeling free on those back roads. However, not everything in Brianna's life was carefree. In late February 2004, just 3 weeks before she disappeared, something happened that, in hindsight, feels chilling. Brianna went to a house party with friends. During the party, an older teen named Keely, who had once been Brianna's friend, got violent with her. The story goes that Kelly attacked Brianna, punching her in the face repeatedly.
Wow.
Allegedly over some argument or jealousy, they say, involving a boy. And Brianna, despite her martial arts training, did not fight back. She was sitting in a truck when Kelly hit her several times, leaving Brianna with a broken nose and a concussion.
Wow.
It was a vicious assault, and at her mother's urging, Brianna filed charges against Kelly for the attack.
Yeah.
This is important. It shows that Brianna had some conflict in her social circle shortly before she went missing. However, after Brianna vanished, those assault charges were dropped. And police did clear Kelly of any involvement in Brianna's disappearance. Even so, that incident left Brianna shaking and with lingering injuries just weeks before March 19th. So keep that event in the back of your mind. Some have wondered if it could connect to what happened later. At the very least, it shows not everyone in Brianna's world was her friend. There was some drama and possibly dangerous people around. We'll get to that in a bit. All right, now that we know about Brianna's background, her kindness, independence, the challenges she faced, and the trouble with that so-called friend, we can move on to the day everything changed. Let's walk through March 19th, 2004, step by step. It was a Friday. It started as a really good day for Brianna. That morning, she had a big milestone. She was taking her GED exam. So she was actually going to graduate a year early, kind of graduate, but finish high school. The GED exam, if you don't know, is the test to earn her equivalency diploma since she had left high school. Brianna passed with flying colors. You can imagine how relieved and happy she must have been, all her hard work paying off.
Especially juggling those 2 jobs too.
Absolutely. To celebrate the achievement, Brianna's mother, Kelly, took her out for lunch. It was a mother-daughter day of sorts. They got breakfast together. She took her test. They waited for the results, and then they had a nice lunch to mark the occasion. Kelly later said Brianna was in great spirits. She was excited and even talking about possibly going on to college in the future. For Kelly, this was a heartwarming moment. Her daughter seemed to be finding her path again. After lunch, they did a bit of shopping. They ran some errands in the nearby town of St. Albans. It was turning into a full girls' day out. But at some point in the afternoon, something changed. While Kelly and Brianna were in line at a store's checkout, Brianna suddenly stepped out. Kelly recalled that Brianna's attention was caught by something or someone she saw out the store window. Brianna said, "I'll be right back," and walked out. Kelly didn't think too much of it in the moment. Maybe Bree saw a friend or remembered something in the car. However, when Kelly finished paying and went outside, she found Brianna visibly shaken and agitated. It was as if something had upset her in those few minutes she was alone. Kelly asked her what was wrong, but Brianna was vague and said she needed to get home to get ready for work that evening. Kelly didn't want to pry, and Brianna didn't explain what had spooked her. Kelly respected her privacy and didn't push for details. To this day, we don't know what or who Brianna saw during those few minutes. Speculation runs wild. Did she bump into someone who scared her? Did she receive a threatening note or a call? Or, as one of Brianna's private investigators later suggested, maybe it was something mundane, like stepping out to sneak a quick cigarette. Brianna did smoke and her mom did disapprove. We just don't know. All we know is Brianna was unnerved and eager to get home. Kelly drove her daughter back to the house of Jillian, Brianna's close friend and roommate at the time, in Sheldon, Vermont. They arrived somewhere around mid-afternoon, roughly 3:30 p.m., give or take. This would be the last time Kelly ever saw Brianna.
So sad.
I know, I can't even imagine. Breaks my heart.
I do keep thinking, at least, I feel like we have a lot of these stories where like, oh, I didn't get to see them the day of, or I missed them. At least she was able to be with her and get that good news. And I don't know, maybe have a good memory to get her through the next 20 years. But
I'm sure
terrible.
Having a good day is something to hold on
Something.
to.
Yeah.
As a mom, Kelly likely wished she'd gotten more out of Brianna about what was bothering her, but of course we know hindsight is 2020. At the time, it seemed like typical teen stress or urgency. Before Brianna headed out to work, she did something considerate. She left a note for her roommate, Jillian. Jillian was still at school and wouldn't see Bree that day. The note basically said, "Hey, I'm heading to work at the Black Lantern Inn. I'll be home after my shift between 10 and 12 tonight." It even included the phone number of the Black Lantern Inn. This note shows that Brianna fully intended to come back home that night. She wanted Jillian to know her plans so no one would worry. There is zero indication she was planning to run away or disappear on purpose. She literally wrote, "I'll see you after work." With that, Brianna got into her pale green 1985 Oldsmobile, which was loaned from her mom, but essentially had been Bree's car to use, and drove off to her job at the Black Lantern Inn in the town of Montgomery. The Black Lantern Inn was about 20 miles away, and it was roughly a 30-minute drive through the rural roads. For context, Montgomery is a small town in northern Vermont, quiet, close-knit. The Black Lantern is a combination inn and restaurant. Picture a cozy brick building with white pillars, kind of classic New England vibe. Not the sort of place that gets rowdy. It's more an inn with a modest bar and dining room for locals and travelers alike. That Friday evening, Brianna's shift at the Black Lantern was unremarkable. She worked as a dishwasher, which meant she spent most of her time in the kitchen, not out front with customers. According to coworkers and later investigations, nothing odd happened during her shift. No dramatic phone calls, no strange visitors looking for her, just a normal work night as far as anyone knows. When the restaurant's closing time came around, some staff would occasionally hang out for a bite or a drink after hours, typical end of shift unwinding. But Brianna didn't stick around that night. She told her coworkers she had to get home to rest because she had an early shift at her second job the next morning. This matches what we know. She had recently started working mornings at a diner in St. Albans, and we know she was responsible. She didn't want to be exhausted for her morning shift, so she was eager to get going. At approximately 11:20 p.m., Brianna clocked out of the Black Lantern Inn. She was seen leaving alone, heading to her car in the parking lot. Her workers later confirmed that Brianna left by herself. There was no one with her as far as they saw, and she mentioned no plans to meet anyone after work. This is the last confirmed sighting of Brianna. a 17-year-old girl walking out of her workplace into the dark of a chilly March night, presumably heading home. This is where the story turns into every parent's worst nightmare because Brianna never made it home. What happened next was not discovered until the following day, and it's the bizarre scene that I described at the top of the episode. The morning of March 20th, 2004, which was a Saturday, came, and initially, no one had realized that Brianna was missing. Jillian, her roommate, saw Brianna's note on Friday and was going away for the weekend. She didn't get home until the following Monday. Brianna's parents thought she was staying at Jillian's as usual, so Brianna wasn't reported missing by anyone that morning.
Did Brianna know that Jillian was going away? Because she said she would see her after work.
I know, and I'm not sure. Like, you could say maybe that note was staged or something if Jillian hadn't seen it, like pretty much right after Brianna went to work on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if she just forgot or didn't know.
Or maybe
she left a note. Did she? They would have seen it probably.
Like if Jillian left her a note
saying, I'm going away for the weekend. Like, I'll see you on Monday or something.
Yeah, she might have. And Brianna would have never seen it.
Yeah.
So
if Brianna didn't know,
yeah,
she said, I'll see you when I get home. And then Jillian left her note, hey, I'm leaving for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't find anything like that.
I'm not sure.
But
because
maybe she got home and threw it away if she's like, oh,
yeah,
she never made
exactly.
it home.
Mm-hmm. She got home and saw the note that she had written to Brianna.
Maybe.
Like untouched, unmoved, exactly where she left it. And she was like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But she's like, well, maybe she was just doing
say anything
stuff.
Like that, Jillian, or no?
I don't know if she left a note, but she did say she got home and saw her note from Brianna exactly where she had left it, undisturbed, and thought it was weird.
Where Jillian had left it, because she saw it before she went out of town.
Right. And set it back
She went home out of town that Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting that Brianna wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Or in case she forgot. Maybe she forgot she was leaving that night, or maybe Jillian was supposed to leave the next morning and they switched. Or
did they have cell phones?
Some. Body.
Yeah. I was thinking she could have called and left her a voicemail or sent her a text message if they had, to let her know, like, hey, I saw your note. I'm going out of town. So I'll see you on Monday.
And maybe they just like to write notes to each other,
Maybe.
Like, oh, we decided to go early. I'm sorry I missed you. I don't know.
Like this is the time where you had to pay per text message, maybe.
Well, usually you had like a certain amount that you could do, like,
so maybe
like 150 or something.
Yeah. Maybe since they lived together, they didn't text each other.
But she could have called and left her a voicemail.
She could have, yeah.
It's just weird that Brianna thought she was going to see her after work, and then they left out of town, and she didn't let her know, other than possibly speculation she left her a note sitting on the counter.
Right. Yeah.
That just seems odd to me.
It is.
Might file that away and see if I can find an answer. Because that is a good point. I'm not sure. Yeah. Regardless, she was gone and didn't notice that Brianna didn't come home on Friday night, unfortunately, or on Saturday.
Did her work not report her missing?
She was new to the job, and they might have just thought she slept in on Saturday morning, but they didn't report it. Yeah.
That's weird too.
Yeah.
Like if your employee doesn't come, you're not calling them, seeing where they are.
Well, and they might have called her, left messages that no one got.
Maybe they thought she was just a flaky 17-year-old, maybe.
Right, because she was new to the job too.
Yeah, if she had just started.
So
many missed opportunities.
Oh, it gets so much worse. Yeah, it gets so much worse. So that afternoon at around 1:22 on March 20th, a Vermont State Police trooper was dispatched to investigate a report of an abandoned car on Route 118 in the town of Richford, which was near the town of Montgomery. This location is only about a mile from her work. which is crazy that it was so close.
Yeah.
Right? It's essentially on the route Brianna would have driven home. The spot was by an old abandoned farmhouse known locally as the Dutch Burn House. It was a weathered white building, already a bit infamous among locals for being a magnet for minor car accidents. The house sat near a sharp curve on the road, so occasionally speeding or inattentive, maybe intoxicated drivers would skid off and hit the property. Apparently, the Dutchburn brothers who used to live there had to tow out more than a few cars over the years. So, seeing a car off the road by the Dutchburn place wasn't entirely shocking to passerbys. But this was no ordinary fender bender. When the state trooper arrived, he saw Brianna's pale green Oldsmobile and noticed it had been backed into the side of the old house. And I mean literally, the rear end of the car had punched a hole into the farmhouse's siding, lodging partway inside. And we will definitely post a link to see a picture of this. It looked as if someone had reversed at a higher speed right into the building. A piece of plywood that had been covering a window was knocked off by the impact and lay flat on the car's trunk. The car's front end was actually sticking out from the house facing the road, almost like it attempted to back up through the building and got stuck. The front tires were noted as turned sharply to the left, the driver's side, as if the driver might have been trying to turn while reversing. The scene was strange enough that a few people earlier that morning had actually stopped to take photos, thinking, what on earth happened here? These photos, taken by curious passerbys before police even got there, ended up being important documentation. Now, crucially, Brianna was nowhere in sight. The car was unoccupied, and there was no sign of a struggle immediately visible. There was no blood, for example. But as the trooper looked closer, he found some odd clues. Inside the car, on the front seat, there were 2 paychecks made out to Brianna from the Black Lantern Inn. They were from her recent work, possibly the very check from that night shift or previous shifts. The fact that her paychecks were left behind suggested she hadn't simply taken off on a whim. Who forgets to cash their paycheck? And here's my next question. Why, when police saw the paychecks with the name, didn't they try to find who she was?
Yeah.
Why didn't they go to her work, find out she was 17, contact her family?
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Or even just report that the car was there and it punched through the barn, something.
Yep. It does not make sense. On the ground near the car, the officer and early witnesses saw loose change, a water bottle, and a piece of jewelry described as either a bracelet or a necklace lying in the dirt. Later, Brianna's family would confirm that the broken necklace was Brianna's. It was as if these items had spilled out of the car during the crash or in an altercation. The car's doors were unlocked and no keys were in the ignition or anywhere at the scene. And in fact, the keys have never been found to this day. Strangely, the officer also noted an unsmoked cigarette on the ground, but nothing definitively indicating an emergency. Looking at the evidence now, it screams potential crime scene. But at the time, the responding trooper did not immediately think, oh no, a missing girl. Should have, but instead, he assumed this was likely a case of drunk driving or an abandoned stolen vehicle, something relatively routine. Remember, Brianna hadn't been reported missing yet, and the car's plates weren't immediately traced back to her, and reportedly, the trooper did not run the plate at the scene, which is mind-boggling. His mindset was probably another car slid off the road on that sharp curve. The driver, maybe intoxicated or unlicensed, ditched it and got a ride home from someone else to avoid DUI or towing fees.
And that's the unfortunate thing with this house is that you said this happened a lot there. If it hadn't been somewhere like that, they probably would have found it more suspicious. But if they had seen this over and over and over again, they're probably like just another car, like whatever, and not thought as much about it, which is very unfortunate.
It is. I do feel like the fact that it was the back of it, though, because she was going from work, it was on her route. If she came around that curve, I mean, all the other cars that hit head on.
Yeah.
Or
even
like
sideways.
slid. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like not the backwards into it that
Yeah.
this one was. But I do agree. I think that definitely adds to why they didn't dig into that more.
Yeah, they probably thought this is weird, but
Mm.
this house gets hit all the time. So it's just another.
Someone messing around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, in line with that assumption, the trooper arranged for the car to be towed to a local garage and left a note for the owner to contact police. Basically, treating it like an abandoned car and not an active crime scene. The trooper even went by the Black Lantern Inn to see if it was open so he could ask if anyone knew about the car, but the inn was closed during the day, so he got no information. And that was that. No immediate alerts, no immediate search for the driver, nothing at that time. You might be thinking, how could the police not realize a 17-year-old girl was missing here? Unfortunately, due to the series of communication gaps and the timing, nobody connected the dots for days. Here's how that happened. Saturday, March 20th, so this was the day the car was discovered and towed. Brianna's friends and family still assume she's off doing her thing. Jillian is away and isn't communicating with Brianna. Brianna's parents think she's at Jillian's and working. They aren't alarmed yet because it's normal for a 17-year-old who's living semi-independently not to check in every single day. On Sunday, March 21st, still no alarm raised. Possibly people are calling Brianna's cell or her house and not reaching her, but remember 2004, not everyone had constant cell phones and social media. It wasn't immediately apparent that something was wrong. On Monday, March 22nd, so now we've lost our crucial 48 hours. Jillian, the roommate, comes back from her weekend trip. She finds the note Brianna left on Friday exactly where Jillian had left it, not moved, not touched, and that must have been Jillian's first inkling that something was off. It didn't seem like anything was moved or touched or different from when she left on Friday. Still, Jillian could have assumed that Brianna stayed with another friend or maybe with a new boyfriend. There were mentions that Brianna had started seeing a guy named James, though he wasn't a serious long-term boyfriend, just a casual dating situation. Jillian didn't immediately call Brianna's parents that Monday. She waited, thinking Brianna would show up or call. On Tuesday, March 23rd, Brianna has now been MIA since Friday night, so we've got 3 full days. Jillian is worried by now and calls Brianna's mom, Kelly, and basically says, "Hey, has Brianna been with you? I don't think she came home this weekend." Kelly hears this and her heart probably dropped. She had thought Brianna was with Jillian or other friends since they hadn't really heard from her. Both women realize nobody knows where Brianna is. Kelly and her husband, Brianna's dad, Bruce, started calling around frantically. Friends, coworkers, anyone they can think of, but no one has seen or heard from Brianna since Friday night. That's when it truly hits that something is very wrong. Kelly contacts the police that day and files an official missing person report. It's worth noting, filing that report must have been terrifying and frustrating. Brianna was legally still a minor, 17, but she was close to 18 and living on her own. So initial police attitude might have been a bit nonchalant, as we'll see. And unbeknownst to the Maitlands, the police had actually already impounded her car. But at the time, the family had no clue about the car that had been at the Dutch burn house. On Wednesday, March 24th, Brianna's parents are desperately searching for her on their own. Bruce actually drove through the night back to Vermont from a work trip in New York when he heard that Brianna was missing. Still, no breaks.
I can't imagine that. It's been almost a week and she's just been missing, and you went the whole weekend not knowing. Ugh.
Yep. Horrible. On Thursday, March 25th, Brianna has now been missing nearly a week. Well, she has really been missing a week. Her parents go to the Vermont State Police Barracks in St. Albans to provide information They give them photos of Brianna. At that point, an officer shows them a photo of the abandoned Oldsmobile that had been found at the Dutchburn house. Bruce and Kelly obviously immediately recognize it as Brianna's car. Can you imagine that moment? They see their daughter's car rammed into a building looking abandoned and damaged. Kelly later said she was instinctively repulsed by the photo. Like she felt in her gut something awful had happened. She knew Brianna would never leave her beloved car in that state voluntarily. This was the Maitlands' confirmation that foul play was likely. Their minds must have been racing. Did someone run her off the road? Did she crash avoiding a deer and get picked up by a stranger? Did the person who attacked her at the party come back for revenge? Probably all of the worst thoughts that a parent can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
From this moment on, the investigation was in full swing, but those initial days were already lost. It was a frustrating start. Evidence had sat unsecured, leads had gone cold, and Brianna's trail was already almost 7 days old.
That's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can't even imagine.
No.
Kelly later publicly insisted, "My daughter is not a runaway. Brianna was abducted." She knew in her heart Brianna didn't just vanish on her own. And Bruce, her dad, was extremely proactive too. We'll see how in just a bit. Let's break down what police and investigators learned and didn't learn in those early weeks. There were a few witness sightings and reports from that Friday night that trickled in. There was a man driving by around 11:30 to 12, right after Bree left work. He reported that he saw a car with its headlights on at the Dutchburn house location. He didn't see anyone in or around it, but the lights being on stood out in the dark. Another man driving by between midnight and 12:30 recalled seeing a turn signal blinking on a car by the old house. Again, no sign of people, just the blinking turn signal cutting through the darkness. Sometime after midnight, around 4 a.m., an acquaintance of Brianna's, who was actually an ex-boyfriend of hers, was returning from a party in Canada, driving past that spot. He saw a car that he thought looked like Brianna's, thought it might be hers, but he too didn't see anyone at or in the car. And because it was the middle of the night, he didn't stop, but he made a mental note and figured he'd ask her about it later. Tragically,
Never did.
Yeah.
later would never come. The next morning, Saturday, the day after it happened, those people who stopped and took photos found the scene weird enough to document. One of those early morning passerbys is the one who noticed the loose change, water bottle, and piece of jewelry. We know now it was her necklace on the ground next to the car. These witness accounts helped police establish the timeline. Brianna likely crashed or was placed at that house sometime after 11:20, which is when she left work, and before 12:30, since by then the car was seen with a blinker on, presumably after whatever else had happened. The 4 a.m. sightings suggest the car was definitely there through the early morning hours, not moved anywhere, and no sign of Bree. It's eerie to think that multiple people drove by, seeing the car in this odd circumstance, but didn't know that a young girl was missing. If one person had connected it that night, who knows? But I mean, especially if you drive by it a lot, you see cars in there a lot.
That's weird that one person saw it with just the headlights on and one person with the blinker.
I think, yeah, so that the headlights would be really close to when she crashed. Because again, it's only a mile away.
Yeah.
Say it even took 5 minutes to get there from when she left. Clocked out 11:20, got there 11:30. He saw it between 11:30 and midnight. It gives me the impression that something happened between that midnight and 12:30 to where maybe the headlights were turned off, but the blinker accidentally flipped on.
It almost seems like someone followed her from work. I mean, that's such like a short timeline for something to have happened. And for her to be missing. Like if she still would have been in the car, but just sitting there, something, maybe it could have been her fault of something that happened. But it almost makes me feel like someone followed her from work and something happened on the way.
Agreed.
Or someone knew
She would be driving past there.
Be driving and maybe they were like stopped in the road there or something. And then when she came around,
she swerved.
Maybe she stopped and maybe they got into an altercation and then she tried to back up to go the other way
Yeah.
and hit the building.
Yeah.
There also is the possibility that she was planning to meet someone there. She could get there earlier since it was so close to work. Everyone knew the location.
Yeah.
Maybe she met there and she like backed and was just sitting there. And then maybe something happened. She tried to go, but was accidentally in reverse and went backwards.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She must have been planning to go home, though, right after work because of the note that she left for Jillian.
The frustrating thing is because they didn't treat the car like a crime scene, people were in it. The chain of holding, say, for evidence wasn't followed. People were moving it, looking in there for things. So you've got evidence and a bunch of stuff in there.
Contaminated. Yep.
Yeah.
Because the other thought is, she could have pulled off. They could have taken her and someone else could have backed her car into it to make it seem like just a random accident.
Yep.
Without just an abandoned car, right? Giving them more of the idea that it was a drunk driving incident or something.
Yeah. That's true.
But I don't know. Once the police accepted that Brianna was missing under suspicious circumstances, they started investigating in earnest. The Vermont State Police initially, however, considered the possibility that Brianna really might have been a runaway. This was probably influenced by the facts that she had recently moved out, was living semi-independently, and they had a lot of cases of teens leaving home. But Brianna's parents and friends immediately pushed back. This was out of character, and Brianna left important belongings in her car that she never would have abandoned if she took off somewhere. They found her ATM debit card, her glasses and contact lens case. She had vision issues. She would not have left those. And crucially, her migraine medication was still in the car. Brianna suffered migraines, and according to her dad, she wouldn't go anywhere without that medicine. Leaving it behind was a big red flag that she hadn't planned this. So we had those items plus the paychecks, which painted a picture. Brianna didn't run off voluntarily. Something happened to prevent her from leaving with her car. Fairly early, law enforcement started to agree that foul play was the probable cause of her disappearance. Investigators combed the area around the Dutchburn house with search dogs and foot patrols in the following days. They didn't find any obvious evidence. No blood, no DNA, no Brianna. The car itself was eventually processed by the state crime lab, though not until March 30th, 11 days after she vanished, due to the realization that it was a crime scene. Imagine trying to get forensic evidence from a car that has been handled by random people, towed by a company, and pried open by her worried dad. Yes, Bruce actually broke open the trunk with a crowbar at one point when he first saw the car at the garage, fearing she might be inside. She wasn't. The potential contamination of evidence is frustrating to contemplate. One early theory the police considered was that the scene at the Dutchburn house might have been staged. In other words, maybe somebody intentionally backed the car into the house to throw off investigators, to make it look like an accident or runaway situation instead of a crime. Even the FBI, in a 2007 flyer, stated that it was a possibility the car was staged to appear as an accident. Brianna's parents also felt strongly that the car's positioning was too odd to be a simple crash. They suspected someone else arranged it that way after whatever happened to Brianna. Let's talk about possible leads that emerged. This case, unfortunately, had quite a few rumors and tips. Some of them are really dark. The drug house raid, which happened in April 2004, it was about 3 weeks after Brianna disappeared. Vermont State Police got an anonymous tip that Brianna was being held against her will at a house in the nearby town of Berkshire, Vermont. This house was known to be rented by two men, a man we'll call Ryan's, who goes by Street, and we'll call the other one Low. So we have Street and Low. Both were known drug dealers from New York who had been operating in the area. Brianna, it turns out, was acquainted with one of these men at least casually. Some friends said she had recently started experimenting with cocaine. And these guys were allegedly her sources. This is a tough aspect to discuss because it's been speculated that Bree's brief dabbling in that scene may have introduced danger into her life. Acting on that tip, police raided the Berkshire house on April 15th, 2004. This was a big operation involving multiple officers. Inside, they found plenty of drug paraphernalia, plus significant amounts of cocaine and marijuana. They did not find Brianna. They arrested one of the men, Street, on drug charges. Lowe wasn't there at the time. Although this raid didn't rescue Brianna, it raised a huge question mark. Could her disappearance be connected to these individuals and the drug scene? Investigators discovered that Brianna had lent money to Street at one point to buy drugs, and chillingly, a rumor surfaced that there was a violent confrontation over that money. Later that year, police received a written statement, an anonymous affidavit from a woman who claimed to have horrifying knowledge of Brianna's fate. This woman, described only as an older female, alleged that Street and Lowe murdered Brianna about a week after she went missing. According to her statement, and prepare yourselves, this is dark, Brianna was killed in a fight over drug money. Her body temporarily stored in the basement. Then, she says, dismembered with a table saw and disposed of on a pig farm.
Oh.
Yeah. It's the most horrific rumor ever imaginable. For many, this sounded like something out of a nightmare, and indeed, no evidence was ever found to corroborate this grotesque story. Law enforcement could not verify any of the claims in the affidavit, and without a body or forensic evidence, it remained just allegations. Street and Lowe have never been charged in connection with Brianna's disappearance, and both have strongly denied any involvement. But to this day, many followers of this case consider them strong persons of interest, if not in actually committing a crime against Brianna, then at least being involved in the circumstances.
Did they check the basement for...
They did when they raided
anything?
the house, but they hadn't gotten the statement from the older woman yet.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that
Did they
if
check
they
for like
could-
blood or stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, they were looking for that in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And if her statement was right, that would have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if they were able to get a warrant to go in with, luminol or something to
Mm-hmm.
really test for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to find that.
Okay.
That does kind of line up with her maybe seeing someone that morning. Maybe if she
Mhm.
owed them money or something like that. But I hope is not true. That would be horrible.
When the reports say lent them money, I'm assuming she gave them money and then they were going to get back to her with drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I almost wonder if that is true, which I don't even know if it is true, like that the Dutch burn house was a meeting spot
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
or an exchange and they decided, or there was maybe it went south. I don't know.
Maybe they didn't have exactly what she had paid for and they got in an argument
Mhm.
about it.
Right. Yeah.
Any?
Or they jumped her because they didn't want to give her any of it, or
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of ways that scenario could play out, and they're all awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of Brianna's friends, Katie, later flat out said she believes that Brianna owed the wrong person money for the wrong thing. That person, she believes, was in her car that night, implying the drug debt scenario. This is one of the prevalent theories that Brianna may have planned to meet someone after work to either pay back money, buy something, get something she had already paid for, and it went terribly wrong. Remember Lowe, the other guy from the house? There are disturbing accounts about him. Brianna's friend or ex-friend, Keely, the same one who attacked her at that house party. They had been friends before. They did run in overlapping circles. She recounted that shortly after Brianna vanished, she and some girlfriends saw Lowe in town. They boldly told him, "You're the number one suspect." In response, Lowe allegedly threatened them, saying, "I'll have you all effing missing."
Oh,
Yikes.
yes.
That quote gives me chills.
Yeah.
If the story is true, it indicates that he was not exactly concerned with looking innocent. Keeley also described Lowe as extremely pushy and that he would try to lure teen girls with promises like, I'll buy you whatever you want, I'll take you shopping, to get them to go places with him. Several local young women came forward to say Lowe had tried similar lines on them to get them to go to New York City or elsewhere. Suffice it to say, Lowe is someone that many feel could have knowledge of what happened to Brianna. At the very least, his reputation was predatory. There was also local talk back then, as Keeley recalled, that people say Bree was with him and that she owed him money. This aligns with the quote from Katie and the general theory that Brianna got entangled with dangerous people over drug money. It's important to stress, though, that no charges have ever been brought against Lowe or anyone else in this case. It's largely circumstantial and based on secondhand accounts. Lowe and Streets were, however, definitely in the picture of Brianna's life, at least on the outside. Brianna's family also reported getting some awful anonymous phone calls in the month after Brianna disappeared. Callers would say things like Brianna was tied to a tree in the woods or that her body was at the bottom of a lake. The calls were cruel, and again, they led nowhere, just tormenting the family with gruesome images and zero proof. It's hard to imagine the emotional toll of receiving calls like that while searching for your missing daughter.
Why do people do this? Knock it off.
I don't get it.
Disgusting.
I can't even come up with a reason.
No.
It's baffling and awful. Stop it.
Yes.
Amidst, these dark theories that kept getting thrown at Brianna's family, police publicly stated that they had no evidence Brianna left on her own accord. By 2007, so 3 years later, they officially announced they believed foul play occurred and that she likely did not vanish voluntarily. Essentially, the runaway theory was completely dead, and Brianna was classified as a probable victim of a crime. The case also drew comparisons to another high-profile disappearance that happened just 1 month earlier. A lot of you might know this one, the case of Mara Murray, a college student who vanished after her car was found crashed in neighboring New Hampshire in February of 2004. Mara's disappearance was about 90 miles away from Brianna's, and because the two cases involved young women, car wrecks, rural areas, people wondered if there might be a connection. Law enforcement looked at it and said, no, the events are unrelated. It appears to be a tragic coincidence that two eerily similar car abandonment missing women cases happened so close in time and location.
That's wild.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that is.
They were like similar ages, similar things, like finding, their belongings still there and
so close too.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And Mara Murray's is also unsolved. As weeks turned into months, search efforts continued. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods and fields. The Maitlands and the community held fundraisers. They offered rewards. Initially, the family put up a $20,000 reward for information leading to Brianna. There were news stories, flyers. They even had psychics chiming in, as often happens in these cases. The case was covered on shows like Dateline, later on the documentary series Disappeared, bringing national attention, but still no concrete answers. One particularly painful thing for Brianna's father, Bruce, was him feeling like the authorities weren't moving fast enough. In mid-April, less than a month after Brianna vanished, Bruce wrote a letter to the governor criticizing the state police's handling and urging more action. This was covered in the local press. This, I believe, shows how desperate and frustrated her family had become.
I'm surprised it took 3 years for them to officially announce that it was probably a crime.
Yep. And in that same vein, it would be years before they got any developments. The case went cold for long stretches. Though investigators insist they never closed it, every once in a while, something would pop up in the news. In 2006, security footage from a casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey, showed a young woman at a poker table who resembled Brianna. There was a quick buzz of hope. Could she have somehow run off to Atlantic City? But the woman on the tape was never positively identified, and nothing came of that lead. It remains just a curious footnote. In 2011 and 12, the notorious serial killer Israel Keyes was considered as a possible suspect. Keyes was known to have murdered several people across the country and had ties to the Vermont area. He owned property in Constable, New York, not far from where Brianna had disappeared. For a time, investigators probed whether Keyes could have been passing through and abducted Brianna at random, but by the end of 2012, the FBI ruled him out in this case. Keyes completed suicide in December 2012, taking way too many secrets to his grave, but there's no indication he was connected to Brianna's story. And along with that, they had no idea that Keyes was active in 2004 when this happened. They didn't know till they arrested him in 2012. So,
wow.
The Dutchburn farmhouse itself, the eerie landmark of this case, burned down in July 2016. It was an act of arson, possibly just local vandals, not necessarily connected to Brianna. That felt like a gut punch to the community, seeing the physical scene of the mystery go up in flames, as if erasing what little was left. Fortunately, by then, investigators had already done any kind of analysis that they could on the location. Now, if you are a true crime follower, you know that the 2010s brought huge advances in DNA technology, and Brianna's case was one that could potentially benefit even years later. In March 2016, around the 12th anniversary of her disappearance, investigators revealed they had recovered DNA samples from Brianna's car. They didn't say whose or what. It could have been touch DNA from hair, skin cells, etc., just found on some items in or near the car. For a few years, nobody heard anything about those DNA results, just that testing was being done. Then, in 2022, a breakthrough. The Vermont State Police announced they had identified a DNA match from the evidence found in Brianna's car. This was done with advanced forensic genealogy, likely working with a lab called Othram in Texas. They had taken an unknown DNA profile from the scene, through genealogy or database matching, linked it to a specific person from their list of 11 persons of interest that they had in this case. Now, before we get too excited, they did not publicly name the person, and importantly, they said that this does not necessarily mean they found the killer. I mean, it could have been someone who was just in her car a day before, right? Detective Sergeant Angela Baker clarified, it doesn't mean that we have identified a suspect, but rather they identified the source of that specific DNA. The person matched was someone among those 11 individuals that they had already been looking at during what had been an 18-year investigation at that point.
Wow.
That person was very cooperative and spoke with police. We don't know who it was. It could be one of the known names like Street or Lowe's, or another acquaintance entirely. It could even be an innocent explanation. Maybe a friend had been in her car, like I said, a day before. But still, it was a significant development that showed the case is not forgotten and that science might inch things forward. As of now, 2025, the identity of the DNA still hasn't been released, and no charges have stemmed directly from it. The investigation remains active and ongoing, with the DNA clue being one piece of the puzzle. Fast forward to today, over 20 years since Brianna disappeared, and her case remains unsolved, technically, but it is far from inactive. In fact, the 20th anniversary in 2024 saw a big push from law enforcement. The FBI and Vermont State Police held a press conference and announced a new $40,000 reward for information leading to Brianna's recovery. The word recovery is sadly telling. After 2 decades, authorities are sadly looking for remains or definitive answers rather than expecting to find Brianna alive. This reward is significant. It's meant to shake loose any secrets someone might be holding on to. The FBI special agent in charge made a plea at that announcement. Someone out there may have information that can help solve this case. It's been too long. It's time to come forward. No tip is too small. We will work to cover every lead until we bring Brianna home. The Vermont State Police Colonel, Matthew Birmingham, added that they are as dedicated now as ever and emphasized this is not a cold case, but it is an unsolved one. They truly hope the reward might motivate those who know something, even second or third hand, to speak up after all these years. Allegiances and fears can change over time. Maybe someone who was scared in 2004 might feel safe to talk in 2024 or now 2025 with $40,000 on the table and possibly certain suspects behind bars for other crimes. Brianna's family, meanwhile, has channeled their grief into advocacy. Her father, Bruce, did something really remarkable. In 2018, he founded a nonprofit organization called Private Investigations for the Missing. Through this organization, Bruce helps other families of missing persons hire private investigators to work on their cases. He was motivated by his own experience. He knows the agony of not having answers and the limitations law enforcement sometimes faces. As Bruce put it, I've gone through a lot of hell in life because of what happened to Brianna. By starting this nonprofit, he's turning that pain into purpose. He said, I'm trying to do something good by helping other people that are kind of in the same boat as me. Something good to come out of what's really been a bad situation. It's inspiring. He's helped dozens of other families get investigative help. And interestingly, private investigators have been involved in Brianna's case for many years too, working alongside police. In fact, 2 PIs have doggedly pursued leads on Brianna's case on the family's behalf. They've turned up some of the information we discussed, and they help keep the case alive. There was even a book published in 2023 by one of these investigators, Greg Overacker, titled The Hunt for Brianna Maitland, detailing his years of work. I highly recommend if you were looking for resources for this case.
Bruce probably wishes that he would have had this for himself. I wonder if maybe if they would have caught it earlier and started looking the next day, wonder if maybe they would have been able to find more.
Well, there's so many things that they could have done if they had started earlier with her car and not lost any of that type of evidence there.
Yeah, she could have still been in the area.
Yeah.
There could have been footprints that got trampled over. I mean,
yeah.
Tire tracks.
Tire tracks. Yeah. If her necklace, it might have had something on it too.
Yeah.
Even finding more inside the car without it being handled and mishandled.
Yeah. They just lost so much time and so much with the car being impounded and not being looked at from the beginning. It's really sad.
It is really sad. And the situation was just the perfect recipe for them to not make that connection sooner. Their living arrangement, jobs, friend going out of town. Like if she hadn't gone out of town, she would have known Brianna didn't come home that night.
Yeah.
I don't understand either about them not going back to Black Lantern Inn
after it opened.
Paychecks are these? Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or contacting the family
it's not
immediately.
Open during the day. Have someone go later.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Even
don't
just
know.
to say she had an abandoned car or something.
Her car's here. How do we get a hold of her? How do we find her?
Don't leave a note for the driver.
No.
Run the plates.
Something.
Look, I guarantee in the glove box it said who it was registered to.
Her name was on the paycheck sitting in the car. Who
and her
leaves
mom's
that?
name was probably in the glove box.
Well, and who leaves their paycheck sitting there? Even if my car broke down and I had to leave and go home and come back the next day, I would have gotten that stuff out of the car. I would have left my paycheck sitting in the car.
You fold them up, throw them in your purse, throw them in a back pocket, like that in your shoe, anything. You're not leaving your paychecks.
Yeah.
And your credit card and your glasses.
And your medication.
With your car unlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you obviously took the keys with you or, you know, whatever happened to the keys, but...
Why aren't these red flags going off in their minds? when they were looking at this from the beginning. It's so terrible.
I know.
Because if they had just thought about those things a little bit more, or looked into it a little bit better, tried to find out something from the restaurant.
Yep.
If her job that she was supposed to be at in the morning had called and tried to find her, where are you?
I mean,
there's so many missed marks there.
Yes, I agree. And I also wonder, because she did have a cell phone, if they had done it sooner, could they have pinged its last known location?
Yeah.
I mean, was it still on? Did it get broken? Did they find it?
Yeah. So many things.
Yeah. As of today, Brianna would be 38 years old if she were alive. Her case remains one of Vermont's most baffling mysteries. Officially, it's unsolved and open. Unofficially, many feel like the answer is known within a circle of people in the community who have just never come forward. It's like a puzzle with a few crucial pieces still missing, but perhaps not forever. So, what do I think happened? Maybe you're wondering, after all of this story, where does the truth likely lie? I'll preface this, I am not an investigator and I do not have all of the evidence. But piecing together the accounts we have, here's a scenario that a lot of people find plausible. Brianna left work and either voluntarily met up with someone she knew, perhaps offering a ride, meeting to exchange something, or followed by somebody from her work. The location of the Dutchburn house might have been a planned rendezvous, or just where something went wrong. There could have been a confrontation, maybe over money or unwanted advances or anything. It could have turned violent. However, given the lack of blood at the scene, it's possible Brianna was either willingly or unwillingly subdued and taken elsewhere, leaving her car behind. Perhaps the perpetrator tried to make it look like Brianna had an accident, left her car the way it was, maybe even hoping it would catch less attention if it looked like a drunk driving accident. The fact that 2 of her paychecks were left in plain view on the front seat suggests she wasn't thinking about them at all when she got out of the car, whether by force or fear. And she left without the basics, like we talked about, didn't grab the medication. If it was someone known to her from the drug world, they might have had resources or accomplices to help hide her or destroy or conceal evidence. At the same time, I am very open to other possibilities. Could it have been a random opportunist who had been on the road? Could she have pulled over for someone in distress, like a fake emergency, and gotten attacked? There was at least one known predator in the area in the years around 2004, but not one definitively linked to her case. One more thing to consider is time. 21 years have passed. Allegiances change, guilt weighs, and people talk. My hope is that as time goes on, someone who knows something will have a crisis of conscience or realize that protecting a killer or a kidnapper is not something they can live with. And with the FBI reward out there now, maybe someone will finally spill the secret that cracks this wide open. If there's something to be learned from Brianna's case, it might be about the importance of acting quickly when someone disappears. A lot of factors led to the delay in realizing Brianna was missing, and those first 48 hours, crucial in any investigation, were lost. Since then, Vermont authorities say they've changed how they handle missing persons, treating such cases with more urgency right from the start. Brianna's case, sadly, was a catalyst for improving that system. And for all of us, Brianna's story is a reminder, even in seemingly peaceful communities, dark things can happen. A teenager with the world ahead of her can vanish in the blink of an eye, leaving only a silent crash scene behind. It's absolutely a parent's worst nightmare, a friend's deepest fear realized. Yet, we continue to talk about Brianna. Why? Because telling her story keeps the pressure on. It honors her memory, and it might even reach the right ears. Ears that have information. Maybe someone listening knows a person who suddenly acted strangely after that weekend in 2004, or heard a confession at a party years later, or has found themselves carrying a burden of guilt. To that person, I'd echo what the FBI said. No tip is too small. It's time to come forward. Brianna's family and friends deserve answers. They deserve that funeral and a chance to say goodbye. If Brianna is somehow out there alive, we all want her to know that no one has forgotten her, not for a second. And if she's not, we want those responsible to finally face justice and for her to be brought home. I truly hope that by raising awareness and revisiting her case, we get a little closer to the truth. As of now, it remains an open mystery, one that I and many others will continue to follow until it's solved. Brianna's story isn't just a cold case. It's a 21st century cautionary tale and a rallying cry to keep seeking justice no matter how much time has passed. Thank you for listening to this detailed journey through Brianna's case. I know it was a long and winding road, much like those dark Vermont back roads where this mystery began. If you found this case as compelling as I do, please consider sharing Brianna's story because we want to reach that one person out there who can help close this once and for all. If you have any information about the disappearance of Brianna, no matter how minor it might seem, please contact the Vermont State Police or the FBI. After 20 years, even the smallest clue could be the key. What do you guys think?
Really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting. And so many just missed things that might have made such a difference from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like we said before.
The worst part.
All the what ifs, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's just crazy that someone can just vanish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Heartbreaking. I can't imagine for her parents.
Yeah. Really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. We appreciate you. And again, if you know anything or if you could just share this case, we would be so grateful. If you know anything, we will put the information to reach out in the show notes and make it as easy as possible. Maybe that one thing you think isn't important is vital. We would love if you would share our episode. Maybe it would reach the right ears that way. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, iHeart, and all major streaming platforms. If you're interested in the resources that we used for this case, you can find them on our blog, which is linked from our website, crimeclueless.com, and it's under the contributors section. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can connect with us on social media at Crime Clueless on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc. Or you can send us an email, crimeclueless@gmail.com. Thank you again. And remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.